to the mic, they start dimming the lights. You start feeling alright. From Birmingham, home of the Teddy Longs and the Ruben Studders. More once you discover. For all of the lovers of Whitney Houston and Roman Reigns. For all of the lovers of Mickey James and Marvin Gaye. For all of the lovers of Sasha Banks, Janelle Monáe, Silk, Sonic, and Paige. Allow me to say, look, I just found a place, sweet escape, every one of us. I was kinda lazy, I just made it off the struggle bus. Walking by the fate, cause I know it's right in front of us. Yo, I ain't with the hate, gotta focus on what's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Steph Hardy is on the air. Had to drop a couple bars just to make you all aware. So, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. You know I go by Joe or the Wrestle.
Hey y'all! Welcome to the 95th episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. So I'm just so happy to have this new episode. So of course I'm going to talk about your news and gossipage, which is Power Pack. Then I'm going to talk about keeping positivity in wrestling as a fan and a journalist. Then I'm going to discuss what I liked in wrestling this week, which was a lot. So of course, thank you so much for helping me get to 95 episodes. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. I miss y'all. Alright, so here we are in the 95th episode, and of course there's always a lot going on in the world of wrestling. So of course we're going to start with news and gossip-ish, and the first order of business to discuss is the fact that Tessa Blanchard, who was someone I tried my best not to talk that much about in light of everything that was released about her in terms of her racist behaviors in the past, but I have to discuss this because it's interesting. Tessa Blanchard is believed to be done with WoW superheroes, with women of wrestling. So it's been reported, and it's also been confirmed by Dave Meltzer, who we also still have to take with a grain of salt these days, that Tessa Blanchard and Women of Wrestling WoW have been at odds in the belief, and that there is a belief that she is no longer even with the promotion. Now, the former Impact World Champion was not at the show's first round of tapings last weekend as they returned after a long absence with a new syndication deal in tow. And Meltzer also said that the two sides had different ideas and were constantly butting heads. Fightful Wrestling also reported last week that there have been issues between both sides, partially related to a mid-April promo that she cut on wrestler Samantha Sage / Americana during a class. While the subject matter is unknown, they reported that many trainees spoke up about it and further promo classes were canceled. And they also reported that Tessa Blanchard was no longer the lead trainer for the Los Angeles-based company, with Selena Majors taking the reins. So, of course, it was announced that Tessa Blanchard was kind of going to be at the forefront of WoW, which is now owned by LA Lakers owner Jeannie Buss since the fall of 2018. And she was sort of put out there, while also it was announced that AJ Lee was going to be attached to WoW Wrestling in their revamp and everything, and it had a lot of speculation based off of all of the racist behaviors that she had exhibited a few years ago and was exposed for. And she has yet to address it on Instagram, where she is still active, and WoW has not released any statements. And it's also been put out there that Tessa Blanchard hasn't wrestled since September of 2020, when she dropped the Warrior Wrestling women's title to Kylie Rae. And it's very unfortunate that someone as gifted as Tessa Blanchard has a bad reputation. Something that I learned a long time ago when I had actually graduated from Berea College with my degree in music, was that sometimes you can have all the talent in the world, but if people don't want to work with you, then you're not going to have that much good luck in the business that you're in, because if people don't like being around you, and if you have bad energy, and if you're constantly having drama and a dark cloud over you, then people aren't going to want to work with you, and you won't be in a space to listen to other people who have more to say about how you can better yourself, and they won't want to help you in anything that you're doing. And it's really sad that this is following her, because she's a talented wrestler and she's broken barriers, but it's like she's doing this at the expense of other people and walking all over other people. And it's just really sad that this is happening. But I guess sometimes in life, people really just have to learn from their mistakes and learn about what it is that they're doing in order to get them better. So, I mean, here's hoping that Tessa Blanchard has learned her lesson. But even if she hasn't, I mean, there's really nothing anyone can do at this point. But it is understandable that people aren't wanting to work with her because of her past bad attitude. So here's hoping that WoW Wrestling can get itself together for the other talent that they have that aren't necessarily exhibiting bad behaviors or have a bad reputation. So I'm hoping the best for WoW Wrestling and the women wrestlers who are still there. So that's really all I have to say about that. Also in the news, we have the former tag team that was formerly known as the Authors of Pain announcing a new wrestling promotion that they have started. So the Authors of Pain have launched their new pro wrestling promotion called Wrestling Entertainment Series, or WES. It was noted earlier how Razor and Akam were planning a return to the ring, which would be their first match since leaving WWE. And that the report noted that they had reached out to other wrestlers about an event they planned on doing in early June from Dubai. And it was then revealed that they filed to trademark the WES Wrestling Entertainment Series and World Entertainment Series trademarks on May the 3rd. But in an update, they issued a press release Friday to officially announce the promotion. WES will debut Saturday, June the 4th from the Motorpoint Arena in Nottingham, England, and the show will air on Fight TV. And it's been noted that some of the biggest names in professional wrestling will be announced soon for the celebratory kickoff event, and that WES has already have a schedule in place for the rest of the year. And they are planning to run shows across Europe and the Middle East. And the announcement also confirmed that their former manager, Paul Ellering, is going to be returning as their manager as well. So we want to say congratulations to the former members of Authors of Pain for starting their own company, because I know it's probably not the easiest thing to do, but when you know you want to do it, you go forth and conquer anyway. So congratulations on the start of WES, and I hope it is very successful. And I'm really glad that they've maintained a working relationship with Paul Ellering as their manager, because when they were in NXT, if you remember, they were one of the most dominant tag teams there during the Black and Gold era. And when they got up to the main roster, you kind of thought that maybe they would keep that momentum going. But of course, the main roster is definitely different from NXT. So that didn't necessarily work out as planned. They got separated from Paul Ellering and a lot happened, and they wound up leaving the company. So I'm glad to see that they've still found a level of success as starting their own promotion. And by keeping a working relationship with Paul Ellering. So that was cool to know. So also in the news, we have MJF reportedly considering leaving AEW when his contract expires. There's a rumor going on that MJF is reportedly frustrated with AEW and may choose to leave the company when his contract expires. According to Fightful Select, he's leaning towards leaving AEW when his contract expires on January the 1st of 2024, which is 2 years from now. And if that happens, WWE will be the only logical landing spot for the 26-year-old rising star. I can't believe he's 26 and I'm 28. Oh my god. How am I older than MJF? How? Just how? That's so crazy. MJF has apparently been open about his impending free agency and his intention to test the market in various interviews that he's had. Per Fightful, his desire to hear multiple offers is legitimate and not simply part of his heel persona. And it was also noted by Fightful that there was a previously an issue between MJF and AEW president and matchmaker Tony Khan because of MJF doing an interview with Ariel Helwani without notifying AEW or asking for permission first. MJF and Khan reportedly hashed things out during a meeting, but the sentiment hasn't necessarily lasted for MJF. And another part of Fightful's report noted that MJF and AEW have had contract negotiations, but it isn't believed that the two sides are anywhere close to striking a deal. Now, it is also noted that Bruce Pritchard, who works for WWE, has worked closely with MJF and MLW in the past before MJF joined AEW, and he's close with Cody Rhodes, who of course made his return in WWE at Wrestlemania, and he's been booked as a massive star since he made the leap from AEW to WWE. Now, in my mind, the way that I see MJF and the way that he expresses himself as a heel, it seems to be very raw, and it feels like, no pun intended, and it feels like someone like him would be better suited at AEW, where he has more freedom to say what he wants to say. But at the same time, if he does decide to go to WWE and be the ultimate heel in another kind of way, especially if the money is right on his end, then maybe it would be a good place for him to go. But I'm just not sure, because it's like I said, MJF is so raw and he's so abrasive at times as a heel that I just can't imagine someone like him in WWE, that's a little bit more tame, having a place for him. But I guess you just have to wait and see, because wrestling always surprises you. So if MJF does decide to go to WWE, I'd be okay with it, but I would just wonder how he would find his place there when he is so abrasive as a heel. But if he does go to WWE, as a fan, I would be interested to see how him and The Miz would butt heads, or him and just any other heel would just butt heads in any sort of way. So good luck to MJF and whatever it is he decides to do within the next 2 years of his career. Like I said, he's still very much young, so he can do whatever he wants to do at this point. The world is his oyster. So yeah, that's just really cool. Also in the news, we have Gail Kim making a major announcement on Impact Wrestling this past Thursday. Gail Kim came back to Impact, and she made an announcement for a major history-making match for Slammiversary in Nashville, Tennessee, which you could say is Impact Wrestling sort of outside of Bound for Glory, kind of like one of their really big pay-per-views, I guess you could say, like a big four in a sense. She revealed that the Knockouts Championship will be on the line in a first ever Queen of the Mountain match, and Tasha Steelz will be defending her title against Chelsea Green, Deonna Purrazzo, Jordynne Grace, and Mia Yim on June the 19th. Now, there was a back and forth between that Steelz gave with Savannah Evans, with all 5 combatants in the ring and stuff, and they cleared the ring and stood tall to end that segment to build excitement for the match. But then there's also a tease that Tasha Steelz and Gail Kim might be fighting in a one-on-one competition, but for now it's just they're just pushing the idea of this Queen of the Mountain match with all 5 of these ladies. And I am really excited, for this match, because I literally feel that Impact Wrestling deserves a whole lot of credit for what they've done for women's wrestling as a whole. Even if they've had their struggles with broadcasting their channels and stuff like that, they've still given women's wrestling, more than its fair share of flowers. And I'm really happy that they're continuing to do that and keep that same energy with women, in charge, and women behind the scenes doing stuff like that. And plus, I just love all of these women and love their abilities as, women's wrestlers. So I can't wait to see all 5 of these women fight. Like Chelsea Green, Mia Yim, who's returned to Impact Wrestling and she's wrestling again. I'm so happy to see her. And freaking like Deonna Purrazzo, who had a stellar match with Mercedes Martinez for the Ring of Honor Women's Championship on AEW a few weeks ago. Like, you just can't go wrong with any of those ladies. So I'm really, really excited that these women who are former champions get to go up against each other in this Queen of the Mountain match, and I look forward to watching it. Also, shout out to Nikki Bougie, who is the ultimate Impact Wrestling fan, who's just there all the time for women's wrestling talk and stuff. Like, she is the ultimate Impact fan, and I know she's really excited about it as well, so I just cannot wait to see what they have to offer here. So also in the news, we have Roman Reigns reportedly, this is kind of gossipish, I guess you could say, reportedly cutting down on house show appearances. So a lot of speculation ran rampant when he was doing a house show in Trenton, New Jersey. So he cut a promo saying that he was entering a new phase in his life, and he didn't know when he would ever be back in front of the fans in Trenton or for various house shows. So Andrew Zarian of the Mad Men Pro Wrestling podcast stated that the only notable change for Roman Reigns moving forward is that he won't be booked for house shows in smaller markets such as Trenton and stuff like that, and that he will reportedly maintain a significant presence on television and on pay-per-views, and that there is no expectation that Roman will be taking extended time off. But it was also previously reported by Dave Meltzer that Roman Reigns has signed a new WWE contract that will require him to work fewer dates, specifically in relation to house shows. And it was also reported that for a 10-week stretch this summer from late June to late August, Reigns is not being advertised for any WWE events besides Money in the Bank and SummerSlam, which is of course one of the big 4 pay-per-views. Now a lot of people have been sort of going on a tirade online wondering if this means that he's going to go to Hollywood or if, or for me, in my mind, I was hoping like maybe he was taking some time off to sort of heal from something. I don't know, because he did get injured a little bit at WrestleMania, but he has been fighting because he did fight in his WrestleMania Backlash match with that 6-man tag. But at the same time, there's just a lot of mystery surrounding why he would be taking some time off from house shows. I'm hoping that he's okay. I'm hoping that, none of his symptoms would be returning for leukemia and stuff like that, because that would just be the worst possible scenario. But if he is slowing down to sort of, make movies or do stuff like that, then that would be cool too, because he is a mainstream star and he has that appeal and he has that face and, that smile and that hair. So of course, he could make the crossover jump at some point, but it's hard to tell. But my thing is, I'm just hoping that at some point him and The Rock will face off, hopefully, before the end of this year or leading into Survivor Series, going into the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania for next year in Hollywood. So you just never know. But I'm just hoping that everything is okay in terms of Roman Reigns, and that he's just being healthy and doing the best that he possibly can. Also, something interesting that I noticed via my boyfriend, shout out to him, was that Brian K. Simmons, who's the director of Texas Southern's Ocean of Soul marching band, was given custom WWE Championship and a big gold World Heavyweight Championship belt as a thank you from WWE for letting the marching band participate in WrestleMania this year for Bianca Belair's stellar entrance. As you may or may not remember, that the Ocean of Souls band played the theme song for Bianca Belair as she made her entrance for her Raw Women's Championship match against Becky Lynch. And they did such a good job that I guess they just wanted to give Brian K. Simmons a reward, and they gave him a WWE title. And I thought that was really cool. He definitely deserves it because they did such an amazing job that night. And it's something that sort of sticks with me, in terms of that form of representation, and also in the form of having HBCU marching bands on mainstream shows like that. So congratulations to Brian K. Simmons and the Texas Southern University Ocean of Soul marching band. And also shout out to Megan Thee Stallion because she graduated from there and I love her. And she should make an appearance in WWE. Just saying, she should. Then also in the news, we have Young Rock, the NBC comedy show that channels the life of The Rock in a comedic fashion, being renewed for season 3. There are a lot of different shows that did get canceled from NBC and Fox, and it's really sad that they did. But Young Rock wasn't one of them. Of course, the show stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, focusing on different chapters of his life via his childhood, his teen years, and his early adulthood from playing football, and then transitioning into a new WWE star. And it's just really good to see this show, you know, getting the attention and the love that it's getting, and how it's, you know, telling the story of how The Rock started, you know, with his stellar career in wrestling, in football, and how he sort of got his start finding his way, and the conflicts that he dealt with within his family, with his father, Rocky Johnson, and all of the above, and just all the love and support that he did get from his family as well as he started his career, and how it sort of pushed him forward into his movie star career and his fictional role as a presidential candidate on the show as well. So congratulations to Young Rock, and congratulations to The Rock, and also a happy belated birthday to him, because his birthday was May the 2nd and he turned 50 years old. I can't believe that. I just cannot believe The Rock is almost 50. This is really 50 years old. Like, oh my God. It's so crazy. And he's a fellow Taurus. Shout out to the Tauruses, because his birthday is the same week as my dad's birthday. It's insane. Everybody's in their 50s now and just living life and thriving as best as we can. So congratulations to The Rock and all of his many successes. Hopefully The Rock will take this time to reflect on all of his success, be the best dad and husband he can be, and also be the best non-ish retired wrestler he can be, and fight Roman Reigns next year. We're pushing for it. It has to happen. It has to happen. I don't care what anybody has to say, because I'm trying to go to Hollywood next year. So if I'm going to Hollywood, they have to fight. But whatever, I'm sorry. That was a huge rant. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But lastly, in the news, we have the rumor, I guess it's been confirmed to a degree, because I didn't see her last night, of Lacey Evans reportedly moving to Raw and turning heel. Now, this is an unexpected route. According to PW Insider, WWE's current plan calls for Lacey Evans to be a heel on the Raw brand moving forward, and that she's been out of action for over a year after giving birth to her second baby girl. But in recent weeks, they've been showing vignettes with her talking about, you know, the chapters of her life which weren't necessarily that great, and talking about all the things that she's overcome to become a WWE superstar and a member of the U.S. Marine Corps, which details her family's dealing with addiction and abuse, and just them being absent in a lot of her major family and a lot of her major milestones in her life. Like, it's really sad when you think about everything that she's been through and how she's overcome everything. Everybody has a story, and she is detailing hers, and you can tell it's really hard, you know, in the vignettes when she's talking, and you can tell that she's holding back a lot of tears as she's talking about loss and having to deal with so many different hardships in her life, but how she's turned it around and made her life into something that will break generational cycles, which is a real thing that people are fighting every day, including myself. So I admire her ability to tell these stories on a public platform. And it sort of makes it hard for you to hate her. So you can only imagine my shock when I saw this rumor that she's supposed to be turning heel now. How are we supposed to hate her, you know, and respect her as a person, and not respect her as a heel when she's been telling her stories to sort of endear herself more to us? It's just like the whole Southern Belle thing, you know, it was cool for what it was, but it's not like we could really like relate to it, because no one is, as a person who lives in the South currently, no one really, you know, subscribes to that Southern Belle type of thing. That's just something that they just sort of play up for a laugh or a stereotype or something. Like, nobody plays up to that Southern Belle thing. So her being more of a face, you know, felt like it made more sense to me, because I could actually grasp her and understand and sort of empathize with everything that she's gone through in her life in order to rise above. But if they want to turn her heel, then I guess that's okay, because when she came out for SmackDown a few weeks ago, Samantha Irvin announced her, making an appearance, by saying, please rise and show the proper respect to her, which was a little bit awkward for me, but I guess if they want to turn her heel after all this, and that's fine too, but I don't know. I guess this is just a wait and see type of thing, but we'll see. And I really feel like she would be better suited on SmackDown, considering they have the smaller roster of women. Raw, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the show, Raw is really stacked with women's talent at this point. So her being on Raw just seems like it's a little bit extra, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the story of Lacey Evans here. So that's all that's happened in news and gossip-ish. I know there was a lot going on. And now we're going to go to a special segment where I'm going to talk about the importance of positivity in wrestling as a fan. Okay, so I was sitting with my friends one day and they asked me, Stephanie, how do you record your podcast? And I said, with the Anchor app on my phone. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, it's that simple. It is absolutely free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and your computer. And it will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's got everything you need to make a podcast in one place. They even have classes and stuff that you can listen to that will give you all kinds of good tips on what you need to do in order to make the best podcast. So if you want to do this, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm, or download the free Anchor app to get started. All right, so in this special segment of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast, I wanted to talk about something that caught my attention this past weekend in light of Wrestlemania Backlash. Now, of course, any pay-per-view that has to come after the two-night extravaganza known as WrestleMania is going to have a hard time following that act up, right? Like, because WrestleMania this year was really awesome in Texas. Like, there were so many good things that happened between Bianca Belair being Raw Women's Champion and beating Becky Lynch, between Cody Rhodes making his surprise return to WWE, even though a lot of people said it was the worst, even he said it was the worst kept secret in wrestling, period, which it was, but at the same time, it was still cool that it happened. If you don't subscribe to believing everything that you read and stuff. You had like Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns in the winner takes all. There were just a lot of great things that happened in WrestleMania this year. So you can only imagine, like, any pay-per-view that has to come after it, I guess people didn't really expect that much from. So with Backlash, with the title of it being Backlash, historically there have been like rematches from WrestleMania to happen on Backlash and stuff like that. So historically that's what it's always been as a pay-per-view. So this year a lot of people didn't expect that much, from the WrestleMania Backlash card, because there was a lot of rematches on it. It had, of course, Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's Championship in an I Quit match. And a lot of fans weren't expecting much from that match, simply because they're not fans of Ronda Rousey's current run, and because they weren't fans of their WrestleMania match based off of where it was placed in the card and because of other clunkiness that they noted in the match or whatever. And then, of course, you had a rematch between Bobby Lashley and Omos, and people didn't expect much from that match either. And also you had Cody and Seth in another rematch, but then that match turned out to be really good. And then you had, of course, the 6-man tag between the Bloodline and RK McBro, and Madcap Moss versus Happy Corbin, and then Edge versus AJ Styles. Now, on paper, that's a wrestling card that doesn't look as exciting because it's stuff that you've seen before, right? A lot of wrestling fans had that sentiment. So they were like, oh, we're not going to expect much from it, or I'm not going to watch it and stuff like that. Or they felt like this was a pay-per-view that they could miss and not miss much of anything, right? But since I knew I was going to watch it and I knew I was on assignment for it with Women's Wrestling Talk, and I had to do a watch along for the channel alongside Alicia of Kayfabe Queen's podcast, we watched it together and we enjoyed ourselves, immensely. Now, of course, we're going to enjoy wrestling anyway because, of course, we're wrestling girls and we love it. But Backlash offered a whole lot more than we were expecting, and it was just really, really good. The match between the Bloodline and RK McBro was really good. Like, it was 22 minutes of complete awesomeness that you would come to expect from all of these people, together, because RK Bro is a really great tag team. They're the Raw Tag Team Champions. They have the symmetry that they have built and chemistry that they have built over the past couple of months as a team, even though it took a while, but they built it, and they've won the tag team titles on Raw twice now. And then you have the Usos, who are just one of the greatest tag teams of all time, period. And then, of course, you have Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns, who are just, the top dogs in their business and are former champions in their own right and current champions in their own right too. So they were just operating on all cylinders, and the match was fantastic. Outside the ring, inside the ring, it was great. You had Riddle hitting RKOs from the top rope. Like, it was just a whole lot of good stuff going on. Like, it was really good. And then you also have the idea that Ronda and Charlotte in their I Quit match was just absolutely fantastic. It was the stuff that extreme women's matches are made out of. They were beating each other with kendo sticks. At one point it looked like they were like, it was something out of Star Wars, like how they were fighting with those kendo sticks, like with lightsabers and everything. Like, if you took a clip of them fighting with the kendo sticks, it would almost look like they were fighting with lightsabers, and you could replace them with lightsaber lights and it would just be something cool. Like, they were destroying each other. Like, it was just absolutely amazing. They were fighting outside in the crowd and everything, trying to make each other say I quit. And then, of course, Charlotte just had to go and be dramatic towards the end of the match and tried to make it seem like she was going to injure Ronda Rousey's arm. And she said, look, this is your final warning. Happy Mother's Day. Like, girl, why would you say that to a mother on Mother's Day, especially with Ronda being a brand new mother to a newborn at that? Like, you ain't gonna do that. And Ronda didn't let her get away with it. She destroyed Charlotte's arm, and Charlotte had to say I quit. She injured Charlotte, and so she's out indefinitely, and Ronda is now the SmackDown Women's Champion. Like, it was just really lit, and I liked it. And then with Omos and Bobby Lashley, it's like you have the constant fighting with them and MVP cheating on behalf of him. So now Omos and Bobby have to fight in a steel cage, and I'm here for it. I'm really here for it. And then with Cody and Seth, like, their match was really good too, even though I really feel like the ending sort of tainted it a little bit for me, because they were each trying to one up each other by grabbing each other's tights. So it's just kind of like, Backlash was just a really great pay-per-view that had a lot of continuations of stories, of very interesting stories, because at this point, Cody and Seth are still gonna have unfinished business with each other, especially after what happened on Raw when Cody was fighting Austin Theory for the US title, and now Seth, interrupted it. And then with Judgment Day, in the case of Edge and AJ Styles, AJ is gonna want to gun for Edge even more, because of the way that he won his match. And considering Rhea Ripley joined and basically messed it up for AJ and for Finn, helping him with her dark hair and everything, and her being a part of Judgment Day now, like, it is absolutely sick how she joined them, and I lost my mind. So if you want to go on Women's Wrestling Talk and see how I reacted, how me and Alicia reacted to Rhea Ripley joining Judgment Day, then please do, because it was lit. Like, it was absolutely lit. I was so excited. Like, Rhea with black hair, yes ma'am, I loved it. Yes ma'am, do it. And then just the way that Edge, sort of planted the seeds for her to leave Liv, Morgan, like, oh my god, like, that was just really cool to me. Like, Raw has just been popping off, but Backlash was a really good bridge to all of this drama, and I feel like a lot of us, you know, sort of expected the worst from it. Because even afterward, you still had a couple of fans saying that they weren't fans of what happened on Backlash and saying that they didn't like it all that much, or they felt like it sucked. But then you had your other collection of fans who really liked it. So it made me ask the question on social media, on Twitter and on Instagram at Hardy WrestlePod or Hardy Wrestling Podcast. As wrestling fans, is it easier for us to expect the worst out of certain events or matches? And if not, how do you stay positive and hopeful in wrestling? Leave your thoughts below. So on Facebook, I did get some interactions from Najakwa McCoy, aka the Bay. He said that he goes into wrestling events with little or no expectations. Michael Bostic, who is a friend of the podcast, and of course the other half of Janelle from the HR and Jobber Tears podcast, he says sometimes on paper the card looks like it's going to be trash, but ends up being exceptional, like Backlash was. Keita Colston, who is another friend of the pod, said, I try not to fantasy book. I've learned janky endings are usually building to a better story. And then Gabe McRae, who is a longtime wrestling fan friend of mine from Texas, shout out to him, he says that he always goes in with a fresh mind and that he tends to watch the crowd reactions when it's something that's not for him. For example, with a death match, he attended his first death match back in December, and his mind was blown at the crowd and how much real psychology goes behind the violent displays. So I thought that was really interesting. And then Malcolm, who's another friend of the podcast and constant listener and sharer, said he tries to keep the positive because he's always waiting to see what is going to happen in the matches first before going into it with preconceived notions. And I thank all of you guys for your responses on social media. So anytime I do post questions like that on my social media pages, please interact with them, please respond to them, because I might talk about them more on the show and share more other fans' opinions and stuff. So please interact with me on social media as I do try to post more questions and stuff like that. So I know for me, the way that I try to stay positive in wrestling, as a fan and also as a journalist, is just to have an open mind. Because the thing about wrestling, no matter what promotion it is, you just never know what you're going to get. And for me, I also try my best not to read spoilers, because I feel like when people read spoilers and they try to make it seem like, oh, well, I saw that this is going to happen here. It's like, as wrestling fans, we have a tendency to try to make it seem like we have the inside scoop and that we know almost everything about our favorite sport, you know, to make ourselves sound a lot educated and stuff, which isn't a bad thing, to be educated about the sport you love, but I feel like it has its limits. I feel like for me, I try my best not to take the excitement away or take the joy out of it as well, because even though I may read things or see certain things online, because you have to be informed as a journalist, it's just that I just try my best to still have fun with it and still, you know, enjoy it and not, you know, be like a curmudgeon about it. And I think that's just important in terms of being a fan and a journalist, because just when you think that you have all the answers, wrestling changes the questions. So I just think it's just fun for me to watch wrestling in that way. Even though I may know certain things or have certain pieces of information, I just try not to share it with others a lot of the time, or I try not to talk about it a lot of the time, or talk about a lot of behind the curtain stuff. Like sometimes I do, just to give my perspective on certain things, but then other times I really try my best not to, because sometimes you just have to go on the ride and just have fun. So I just try my best to do that in wrestling, and I also try my best to do that in real life. It's just to, you know, enjoy the ride and not overthink about certain things, because when you overthink, you start to ruminate on things, and then you start to either get really sad or you just start to, you know, get angry about stuff, and And it's just not good for your mental health to do that. So I just know when it comes to life and wrestling, it's just better to maintain a positive aspect on it, because you never know what you're going to get out of it. And that's the fun part about it. And to also just have an open mind and an open heart to this thing that you love so much and so dearly, and try not to be such a know-it-all. Because also you have to think about the fact that you have other people who might not be as into wrestling as you are. And then it might be new to them. So if it's new to them, how can you have an open mind about wrestling? If it's new to them, how can you have an open mind to them and teach them about it if you're acting like a know-it-all? That might put other fans or newer fans off. So you have to sort of be welcoming, in that aspect of it, because everyone isn't big as a fan as you. Everybody didn't start, watching wrestling as a child. A lot of people might have just started watching wrestling yesterday. Just yesterday, or last week, or last month, with Wrestlemania, because that pulls in a lot of, curious watchers and curious fans and fans of other fandoms into wrestling. So it's just like, I feel like as a longtime fan, you kind of have to have an open mind, in order to be able to also help teach as well. So that's just how I look at it in keeping positivity in wrestling. I try to encourage all of us wrestling fans and all of us wrestling journalists to always have an open mind and an open heart, to not only teach other people about wrestling who might not have, paid attention to it before, but also to always just have fun with it, because, if you know everything that's going to happen, that's just not going to be fun. You're just going to be sitting there watching like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. And that's a very monotone way to live. So yeah, let's not be monotone in wrestling. Let's be happy. Let's be joyful. Let's be positive, because at the end of the day, positivity in wrestling is powerful. And that's just a point that I had to make with this segment. So thank you to the people again who participated in my questionnaire. Hopefully I'll post more questions about stuff that I think about in wrestling and stuff like that on my social media pages. And also, don't be afraid to follow my social media pages. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Twitter at Hardy WrestlePod and at Hardy Wrestling Podcast. And I'm working on possibly starting a website for the wrestling podcast. So please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions that you might have about wrestling if you first gotten into it, last month or just yesterday. Or, reach out with any questions that you might have about, any predictions that you might have if you are a wrestling fan that's been watching it forever. Please do so. This is an open space. This is a safe place to be as a wrestling fan. The Hardy Wrestling Podcast is for everyone. So that's all I have for positivity in wrestling. And now we're going to talk about what I liked in wrestling this week. All right, so now we are getting into what I liked in wrestling this week, and it was a lot of good things that I really liked in wrestling this week. And also, if you want to share what you liked in wrestling this week on social media, please do so. Post, share, talk about it. If you see me posting clips of the show, of talking about what I liked in wrestling this week, talk about what you liked in wrestling this week, and sort of keep the conversation going in terms of positivity in wrestling, like I just talked about earlier. So please do that. Please feel free to do that, and just spread the love of what you loved in wrestling. So of course, I'm going to start with Backlash, like I did talk about earlier. I really loved Cody versus Seth too, and I'm really excited about where it could go. I'm hoping that they're gonna fight in Hell in a Cell. I'm really hoping, because that's the next pay-per-view that's coming up, and I really hope they do, settle the score in Hell in a Cell, because it's like my dad always says, as a seasoned wrestling fan, Hell in a Cell is usually where people go to end their feuds, to basically end it all, and I feel like that would be a stellar place for the both of them to go, because of course Seth has his history in Hell in a Cell, and I really don't remember if Cody Rhodes has participated in a Hell in a Cell match before. I know he's done cage matches, of course, in the past and other promotions, but as far as Hell in a Cell goes, I don't know if he's done that. But I really hope if that's the case, then they go all the way with it and destroy each other. I'm really excited about where that could go, because Seth really proved that he's not finished with Cody. Like, he is not okay with losing to Cody twice now, because he lost him at Backlash, and then of course he lost to him at WrestleMania in Cody's re-debut. So he's not okay with it. So Seth Rollins came out and interrupted Cody's match, you know, for the United States title against Austin Theory, or Theory as they're just calling him now. And it just shows that they just have unfinished business. And I guess Seth and Becky both were just, you know, on the revenge train in their married household. So Becky decided to attack Asuka and Bianca Belair at the main event of Raw, in their match or whatever. So I guess they're both, you know, ready to just be as evil as they know how to be together. And also, let me just say, with the outfits that Becky Lynch have been wearing lately, you can tell that she really enjoys her post-baby body. And I'm here for it. I might not be here for her as a heel character, but at the same time, I love it when a woman feels secure in their body regardless to how it looks. And you can tell that with all the outfits that Becky has just been choosing to wear lately, it's very different from what she wore during her man era, or during her last kicker era and the steampunk era and stuff like that. You can tell she's really loving her post-baby body, and she looks good. She does look good, and I admire that, and I love that in Becky. I love that for her. I'm glad that she's enjoying herself and enjoying the onesies that she's wearing, that's showing more of her figure, and it's really beautiful. I love it. And I know how powerful the onesies can make you feel in terms of that thigh work and that hip work, because I've worn one before when I dressed up as Carmella for Halloween. I had one on and it made me feel like really, really, really confident in my hips and stuff. So big ups to Becky and her post-baby body, because yeah, she's beautiful. So that's something I really loved. Then I also just loved Rhea Ripley talking about all of the reasonings as to why she joined Judgment Day with Edge. And Edge was basically, he came out there with Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, and you can tell now, okay, he done cut his hair, so now Edge is really leaning into the bad boy stage. Like, I hate it when Edge cuts his hair, because I just love long hair Edge. I just have a thing for long hair. It just does something to me. But you know, that's his choice and it's his body, so he can do what he wants. So he's cut his hair. He came out there on Raw and talked about how he was the one who told Rhea that she should let Liv Morgan go, and talked about how basically Liv Morgan was nothing more than an anchor and a weight on Rhea Ripley's neck, and she was holding her back. And he was just saying all of this negative stuff about Liv Morgan, and I can't stand it when men speak negatively on women, but the way he was doing it as a heel character was just like, oh my god, like, it was just so savage. And I'm just like, Edge, calm down. Liv ain't did nothing to you. Why are you this angry at her? But they're really playing into this you know, thing. And then afterward, it was a great placement, because Liv and Rhea were to fight each other, and Rhea really beat the crap out of Liv, and it was just so sad, because it just really feels like Liv just can't keep no friends. So Liv really needs to just learn how to stand on her own 2 feet at this point. And I'm just wondering what's next for her at this point. After being beat up by Rhea so many times, like, what else could happen for her? Like, oh my god, it's so sad. But I love this new attitude that Rhea has, and I love that she dyed her hair black, because it's definitely different from the blonde that she had been sporting, you know, over the past couple of years. It's just like she just changes her looks she's just really great at elevating her look each and every new era that she reaches in. I just can't get that girl out of my mind who was at the Mae Young Classic with the long blonde hair, and then she cut it and then turned into like this punk rock chick, and then she cut it even shorter and still and it was still, you know, blonde or whatever. Now it's black. And then she had the eye makeup, which was like the scales of judges that they use. And I'm just like, Rhea is leaning into this brutality stick, and I love it. I love it so much. So big ups to Rhea Ripley and her running through everybody. Like, I'm really here for it. Then, of course, I liked Ronda versus Charlotte, and I did talk about that earlier, but I won't talk about that ad nauseum. But I am happy that Ronda Rousey won. I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority with that, but I'm okay with that. I've always loved Ronda Rousey, even from the UFC days, and even her going into WWE the first time. I love it. I'm glad that she's championing again. And Charlotte's gone for, to take a break, I guess, because they're selling the fact that she's going to be out indefinitely with an injury or whatever. I'm hoping maybe she's taking this time off to, just relax and refocus and hopefully get married to Andrade, because I want to see that ceremony. But either way, I'm happy that Ronda's champion, and I absolutely loved the match that she had with Raquel Rodriguez on SmackDown last night. It was so good. Raquel did such an amazing job. So I'm just really excited for where Ronda is going to go with the title, even though it might look like her running through the entire division, which is very unpopular in a lot of wrestling fan circles. But either way, I am still happy that Ronda won. And of course, I love the match between the Bloodline and Team RK McBro. It was really good. So I won't talk ad nauseum about that, because I did just talk about it earlier. So also on Raw, I have questions about the Street Profits, because they challenged, and I mean, they challenged RK Bro for the final time for the Raw Tag Team Championships. And it was a really good match. But before the match, Montez and Angelo had a promo, of course, with them talking about how they want the smoke or whatever. But as Montez was climbing in the ring, he said something in terms of speaking for the Street Profits, but he was sort of speaking for himself too. And he sort of said but then he changed it to we, are the best that Raw has to offer. And I was just like, Montez, who is I? What's Montez? Because a lot of people, including myself, have been sort of, manifesting a singles run for Montez Ford, because he has all the charisma and the athleticism that a man in wrestling could ever want. He has it all. And at this point, the Street Profits have done everything. They're Triple Crown champions. They've won the Evolve Tag Team Championships. They've won the NXT Tag Team Championships, SmackDown and Raw Tag Team Championships. Like, at this point, what more could they do as a team besides really be like hype men at this point? I feel like sooner rather than later, Montez is going to go solo. And I don't know if it's going to happen in a dramatic or hurtful way in terms of Angelo or whatever. Or maybe they'll just break up in a healthy way. But I really feel like Montez has a little bit of heel tendencies really in him that could show if he does break off from Angelo. But I don't know if that's the direction that they're going to go in. Or maybe I'm just overthinking because Montez said I and then replaced it with we. But I don't know. But it is interesting. It's very interesting. So, yeah. So, that's really all I liked from Backlash and Monday Night Raw. But I also liked, hold on. One more thing I liked from Raw. I loved how Asuka called Becky a baby. Because she was just saying, look, you left to become a mommy, but now you're just back and you're acting like a baby. And I think it's so funny. Like, Becky and Asuka just need to have a non-title feud, and Bianca just needs to celebrate being a champion for a lot longer and then face somebody else for the championship, because Becky and Asuka clearly have some unfinished business, and if those two are gonna fight each other and build up like the mid-card, then they can do that. Like, they can do that, and I'm here for it, because that was just hysterical to me. So yeah, another more stuff that I liked in wrestling was NXT 2.0 and NXT UK, since I've been watching it because I'm on assignment to watch NXT UK for Women's Wrestling Talk. I love that NXT 2.0 was a woman-led show. And I know a lot of people a lot of wrestling websites released the narrative that the ratings weren't as good for it or whatever, but I don't care about that. I really don't care about that. This was a mostly female show, and I enjoyed the crap out of it, and I really feel that they should lean more into that more often, because of course you had the start of the women's breakout tournament that had the likes of Sloane Jacobs going up against Fallon Henley, and then of course you had Nikita Lyons going up against a debuting Ariana Grace, who is Santino Marella's daughter. And that match was really good because you expected Nikita to sort of run through Ariana Grace, right? But that was not the case, because Ariana is also trained in MMA and kickboxing as well, and she gave it to Nikita Lyons to a point where I was questioning if Nikita was going to win, but they really did, give it their all, and Nikita wound up the winner. And I can't wait to see more from Ariana Grace as a wrestler, because that match was absolutely fire, but Nikita did wind up winning. Miss Ma'am with the Yams is going forward in the tournament, so I cannot wait for that. I really can't wait for that. And then you also had the NXT women's tag team championship match between Toxic Attraction, Gigi and JC versus Roxanne Perez and Wendy Chu. And that match was really good as well. And I also love how Roxanne Perez is also in the women's breakout tournament too. She didn't wrestle in the tournament this past Tuesday night, but she is in it. And the fact that they're letting her run with the ball in NXT, even though she just got there and everything, because she's so talented and because of all the work that she did in Ring of Honor and because she's a wrestling prodigy, it's just really amazing. And she really did take it to Gigi and JC, even though through underhanded tactics involving Mandy Rose, Miss Mandy, Miss Mandisha, it's like the match was still really good. I want more from Wendy Chu, because Wendy did get attacked by all three members of Toxic Attraction after the match was over. And I just want to see what else Wendy Chu has in store, because she has shown that as a character, she stands, as a really good comedic relief who can get in the ring and tear you up in pajamas. I'm really here for it. I'm excited about it. So yeah, I'm really pumped for it. And I do just love that Toxic Attraction is a female-led faction with all the gold, like the Undisputed Era was, and Evolution was in the past, and New Day has been in the past. Why can't women rise? Why can't women also be sexy and rise and be, rough and tumble wrestlers? It's like Nikita Lyons said on Twitter, you can be a woman that's sexy and kick ass at the same time. It's possible. It is absolutely possible. So I just love the dominance that Toxic Attraction, gives off with women holding all the gold. It's just really cool. Plus I have a girl crush on Gigi Dolan. This is my first time really coming out with it, but on my show. But I have a girl crush on Gigi Dolan. I love her, and I hope she knows that at some point. Maybe we'll meet at some point. I don't know. But yeah. I also loved on NXT 2.0 how Natty 2 Brands had a pretty stellar match against Cora Jade. And Cora really gave it to her. At one point she even locked in her the sharpshooter and everything. I was just it was really cool. And I loved how Cora was still able to look strong even as she passed out from the sharpshooter. And I loved how Natty gave her respect because she didn't tap out and she didn't quit. That is the stuff of legends. I was so proud of Cora Jade and how she stepped up to the occasion. And I loved how Natty showed her respect, because Natalya really is the bar in the women's division. And if you fought her, that means you fought with the best. And I'm just really proud of them. And I want to give a shout out to Fit Finley, because Natalya took a picture with him backstage and posted it on Twitter and gave him his credit as one of the standard bearers in women's wrestling and producing great women's wrestling matches, even in the 2000s when it wasn't as popular for WWE's women to have great matches like that. So she gave him his credit, and I just absolutely love that for him. And then also in terms of NXT UK, Lash Legend keeps popping up and interrupting all the girls over there, because she interrupted an interview that was being held between an interviewer on NXT UK with Amelia, and Amelia was talking about Mako Satomura and how she is still dominant as the NXT UK Women's Champion, and Lash Legend just walked up and interrupted her while she was talking, and that's just rude. You ain't got no manners, Lash Legend. Lash, I love you and all, and I love you as a black woman, but you gotta have better manners, girl. You just walking up in these people's promotion and just acting like they ain't nothing. Like, girl, stop it now. But it is interesting how they see so much in her to where that she's gonna be on both brands, in the UK and on stateside, as they like to say on the UK. I love it when they say stateside. It's just really cute to me. But yeah, and then I also loved Alba Fire and her Swanton Bomb, or formerly known as the KLR Bomb, that she hit on Amari Miller in her re-debut. It was giving Lita, and I loved it. And I love that Alba Fire is turning out to really work for her, even though a lot of fans really do hate it when WWE makes certain wrestlers change their names and stuff like that. It turns out to work really well if you make it work really well. And Alba is really, making it work for her with the bat and the fire, and her heritage and everything. So I'm really here for it, and I love it. And I also loved Sarray finally getting a win over Tiffany Stratton in a mixed tag team match with Andre Chase as her partner, and with Tiffany Stratton having Grayson Waller as their partner. They seemed like the perfect, cute, narcissistic couple, but there's no romance being involved with them. She just took him shopping or whatever to make him feel better. But they would be the perfect narcissistic couple if that was the case. And I'm just really glad that Sarray was able to finally get a win on Tiffany. Because, come on. Sarray is like, she's amazing. Like, she is amazing. Like, she has a really stellar career in Japanese women's wrestling. So you can only imagine my surprise when you have Tiffany Stratton, who's like this athletic queen, consistently beating her all the time, and she's still fairly new to wrestling. So I'm just like, how is she beating Sarray? And I was really finally happy to see Sarray, taking it to Grayson Waller, even with a drop kick and everything, and even with Tiffany hitting a splash on Andre Chase and everything. I was still happy to see Sarray win. Like, that was really good. But I also want to talk about something else back to Raw that I want to discuss that I liked, that has me with questions. Why is Cedric Alexander running back to MVP? Just why? After the way MVP and Bobby Lashley did you, and how they broke up the Hurt Business and everything, why are you running back to MVP? Why? It's like, Cedric, you are already good enough by yourself. Why are you running back to the person who bit you in the butt? I want better for Cedric. I really do want better for Cedric, because he's so talented. He's a former Cruiserweight champion, even though they don't like to mention that or whatever. But, like, there's just so much more that he has to offer than to just running back and being MVP's, person like that. Like, I want more for him. I want better for Cedric Alexander. Like, I really wish he would possibly, like, come back. Like, I wish that somehow or another they would sign Big Swole, and then Big Swole could also be like a wrestler / manager for him, because I feel like don't nobody motivate you like your significant other do if they really here for you like that. And they're married. Like, that would be an amazing manager wrestler dynamic if she were to sign with WWE and she were to be his manager. Like, she be bigging him up on social media all the time, like on Twitter every time he comes on TV. So imagine that dynamic on television on Raw. Like, that would be amazing. Or maybe, I don't know, but I just want better for Cedric Alexander. There's so much more he could be doing besides running back to MVP and Omos. Like, there's so much more for him. And I also love that Sonya Deville was finally fired from her managerial duties. She is no longer an official. The investigation is done. She got her powers taken away. And then on top of that, got beat in quick fashion by a returning Alexa Bliss. Yes. And then Alexa Bliss also made her return with Lily by her side, but with her old music. So I guess she's going to be a goddess with a doll. I'm not mad about it, but I did miss her a little bit. So I am glad that she has returned, and congratulations to her and her marriage to Ryan Cabrera and stuff like that. But I am happy that she came back and that she did beat Sonya Deville and embarrassed her like that, because she deserved it. But if Raw really wanted to get real, they should have brought every woman that Sonya Deville has ever disrespected. That's Naomi, that's Aja Smith, the referee, that's Sasha Banks, that's Carmella, that's Queen Zelina. Every woman that she has disrespected and gave a hard time should have went out there and jumped her after that match was over. They should have jumped her. They all just should have jumped her, because it's just like, ever since Sonya Deville let the power go to her head, she was abusing her power and bullying Naomi and bullying everybody else or whatever. So every woman that she's ever bullied on the main roster, they all just should have collectively jumped her and beat her up, either in the parking lot or backstage or even on television in front of the fans. Like, I want more punishment for Sonya Deville, because she was out here running roughshod over women of color and Carmella, and that wasn't fair, and I'm sick of it. So they all just need to get together one night, regardless to where their allegiances lie, and jump her, because she's a superstar now. She ain't got no more power. There's nothing she can do. Beat her up. So whatever. Another thing that I like in wrestling is the fact that Jeff Hardy and Adam Cole are going to be fighting in the Owen Hart tournament. This is for AEW, and I'm really excited about that, because those are two of my favorite wrestlers. I love Adam Cole and I love Jeff Hardy, because Hardy gang. And I'm still manifesting the day where I can have the Hardys on my show, because that would just be it for me. I wouldn't quit podcasting if that happened, but just know that if I ever interviewed Jeff and Matt, I would be celebrating for weeks on end, and I would just cry, and y'all would just have to check on your girl. But I'm just so happy that they're fighting each other. I almost dropped my headphone. I was so excited about the possibility of it. They're fighting each other, and I'm really happy about that. And I love Jade Cargill and Red Velvet and Kiera Hogan being together as a group. They are so cute. And this past Friday on Rampage, they came out looking like a badass version of the Powerpuff Girls. It's giving melanated Powerpuff Girls, and I love it. I love that for them, and I just love Jade Cargill as our TBS champion. And I love that they come out with fans that are made out of money, and they cry with it and everything. It's just so funny to me. I love it. And like I said on SmackDown, I loved the match between Ronda Rousey and Raquel Rodriguez. Raquel really showed that she is not here to play with these main roster girls. She is here to show that she is here to take her place as a main roster star, and she'll be champion one day, but it might not be right now, but it will be later. I'm so proud of Raquel Rodriguez for showing her strength to battle against Ronda Rousey's wits and MMA background. Like, them fall away slams was giving me so much life. I loved it. And then something else on SmackDown I really loved was the fact that Shotzi and Aaliyah are gunning for an opportunity at the SmackDown Women's title, and they were locking each other in rooms, like pushing each other out of the way to answer the open challenge that Ronda gave out. Like, I'm here for it. I need more Shotzi and Aaliyah on my television. I need more of these women, coming for Ronda Rousey in this title. Like, I need it, and I'm glad that it's happening. And I also loved how Matt Riddle called Sami Zayn Rusty because of his rust-colored hair. And basically talking about how Sami Zayn is basically being the bloodline stooge. That's who he is being. He's being a stooge. And then Shinsuke Nakamura called him the donkey's ass. He called him either a donkey's ass or the head of the table's ass or something, like the table's ass or something. And I thought that was really funny because It just is. And it also shows that Shinsuke Nakamura is not letting up on the bloodline, because he has unfinished business with Roman Reigns. And if y'all gonna let Shinsuke Nakamura challenge Roman Reigns for the titles, then let him do it, because he deserves to have another opportunity at those big titles. He deserves it. He hasn't had an opportunity for those championships since he fought with AJ Styles at WrestleMania in New Orleans that time. And I'm sick of it. Give him another opportunity, please. And that's pretty much all that I liked in wrestling this week. If you want to share what you liked in wrestling this week, don't hesitate to let me know. Drop in the DMs, or of course, comment on my stuff, on social media, pop me in on Twitter and tell me what you liked in wrestling this week. So that's the end of this segment. So now we're just going to go to the conclusion, because I got some stuff to say. Alright, so thank you for joining me on this 95th episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. I'm so happy that the podcast has grown to this point. 95 episodes, y'all. We made it. But I guess I'll say that more when I reach 100. But I am excited for what's to come for the Hardy Wrestling Podcast, though. If you haven't already, please use the link in my bios on my Twitter account at Hardy Wrestling Pod. Well, at Hardy Wrestle Pod. And on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast to vote for the Hardy Wrestling Podcast for Alabama Podcast of the Year at the Alabama Music Awards. Voting ends on June the 12th at midnight. So please, if you haven't voted already, please vote. You can vote more than once. So if you feel it on your heart to vote for me 1 billion times, you can do that. Vote for me 1 billion times. Please do. I am campaigning. I really want this award, and I also want to just kind of show that podcasts with different interests in Alabama, can be nominated for stuff like this and can, have a good chance to win. So I just want to represent and be a good representation of wrestling podcasts, not only in the South, but also in the country as well. So please vote for me. Please, 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 please vote for me 1 million times. Thank you. I will appreciate it. And even if I don't win, I'll still appreciate, the people who did vote, regardless. So yeah, just please vote. Please vote. Please vote. Use the link in my bios to vote for me for Alabama Podcast of the Year. So, on top of that, I also want to announce that the Hardy Wrestling Podcast will have a fan table at the Alabama Comic-Con on June 4th and 5th. At this Comic-Con, it's really big for wrestling fans because we're having the big 3 women show up for meet and greets and pictures and for a panel. Trish Stratus, Lita, and Mickie James are coming to Alabama Comic-Con. So I figured what better way to be a great representative for wrestling at this Comic-Con than to have a fan table. The same fan table that I had at Comic-Con in February is going to be the same setup, but probably a little bit bigger. But either way, I'm really happy to be participating in this because it's a fun Comic-Con that I've been to twice and cosplayed for only once, but still, it's a great event at the BJCC, and all of us nerds are going to come together and celebrate our nerdiness and just be happy together. So if you love wrestling, and if you love my show, or if you want to learn more about wrestling and give your opinions about wrestling, I'll be there. I'll have my microphones there for interviews and stuff like I had before. We can sit, we can chop it up, we can talk about wrestling, and we can just, talk about other things too. Like, if you got into wrestling via video games, we can talk about it, or via reality shows, we can talk about it. Like, please do come to my fan table while you're walking around and having fun with all your other friends too. So I'm really excited for it. I'm pumped about it. And, hopefully I'll be able to participate in Black WrestleFest in Brooklyn, New York, Juneteenth weekend. We're getting everything together financially for me to be able to go out there and up there. I've never been to New York before. So just pray for me and my strength to travel in this new big city that I've never been to before. Like, I've been to other places, but I've never been to New York. That's like a dream city of mine to be at. So please, just pray for my strength and pray that everything comes together, or just send good vibes energy if you're not, a person of faith like that. Please send me good vibes and good energy involved in that process. So yeah, like, good things are happening for the Hardy Wrestling Podcast little by little, and I'm just so grateful for it. We're on the road to 100 episodes, all the conventions, all the things are happening, and I'm just really grateful for it. It's gone really far for someone who records this podcast in my room in my parents' house. So just thank you guys for the love and support that you've shown for my show. Thank you for supporting me even as I've taken certain breaks for my own health and well-being, and also as I help take care of family members who have moved back into the house. Shout out to my mother who has moved back home after her health frenzy that we've been going through over the past couple of months. She's back here, and we're doing everything we can to make her feel comfortable as she recovers little by little. And I'm just so grateful to my higher power for her being back home and her recovering, and just everyone who's rallied around us and showed us love in the midst of this time. So thank you guys so much for supporting me and supporting the podcast. As usual, you can listen to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast on the Anchor app, where you can create your own podcast, and on Spotify, iHeartRadio, my YouTube channel, Hardy Wrestling Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and just everywhere you get your podcasts. And also know that you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Queen Steph Hardy, and you can follow the Hardy Wrestling Podcast on Facebook as well. Share any clips that you might like. If I say anything that resonates with you, please share it on your Facebook and all your other platforms as well. I'm trying to get more into TikTok as well, so please follow me on TikTok at Stephanie_Hardy. So yeah, it's just a lot of good stuff going on, and I'm just trying to get the hang of it. So please just support me in my evolution as a fan and my evolution as a journalist. So with that in mind, and also buy some Hardy Wrestling Podcast merch on TeePublic. Please buy some merch. I have good stuff for you guys. I have mugs, I have shirts. Buy those things if you feel it on your heart to buy those things. I will really appreciate it. So in the meantime, in between time, this has been the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy, with the theme song being performed by Josiah Williams, aka Mr. Russell and Flow himself. And until next time, bye y'all.